legends, and welcome to Unbeatable You, where we connect, thrive, and conquer. I'm your host, Brett Robbo, and I'm super grateful for your valuable time. So let's just dive straight in. Keep thriving and enjoy. Before we start, mate, I usually get the guests to just call someone and say, I love you. So who do you choose?
What, off your phone?
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, you get to dial someone from my phone.
I was like, what?
Classic. Geordie, here we are. Mate, welcome to Unbeatable You.
Thank you, Brett. Honestly, it's actually a privilege to be here. I've actually looked up to you for a long time, so it's nice to be in your presence and having a chat.
Oh, thanks, mate. Received. I appreciate it, and I'm super humbled and grateful to have you here. You are an entrepreneur. You're a part owner in several businesses, including P3 Recovery and Health Centre around the corner that I'm addicted to the ice baths and the saunas, and I'm actually heading there after this.
So good.
You have your own marketing company. You also mentor other entrepreneurs. You've been in businesses pretty much your whole adult life in creating and working with other business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs. You've spent a lot of time in that space. You're also a runner. You do a lot of ultra running, 100K plus type runs. You ran 33 marathons in 33 days, I believe. I'm going to ask you why you would do that soon, but I think I understand. But mate, when people say, what do? How do you respond?
That's a good question. I think, it's changed a lot over the years. And one of the things that has been different from my point of view is trying not to tie myself up too much in my identity of work, and trying to be that, not trying to be that, that good steward in the community of solving lots of people's problems. And I think naturally that's always been from a business point of view. But as you said, like, mentoring and being able to touch on those kind of things has been something that brings me a lot of joy. Yes, it's not financially rewarding. However, it's nice to see other people, get the results and not make the same mistakes I did.
What are some of those mistakes when you get to be at this stage in your life of being involved with multiple businesses? I'm sure that the journey, there's that great line that people think success is like this upward trajectory. There's a straight line, but it's actually this up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down.
Could not agree more. Yeah, I think it's, being patient and respecting the process. I think one of the biggest things that most people do, and this is something to do with social media, I believe, is they're trying to get too much of a quick hit, regularly, and that just leads to, unfulfillment and unreal expectations. And I think if more people just trusted the process, I think, and fall in love with, the discipline rather than results, I think that's generally where we need to try and get back to help people understand that these things take time, and nothing worth having, it takes time. So, actually,
I've heard Alex Hormozi talk about he spends time with billionaires, and one thing that he learned pretty quickly was they only think in decades instead of in years or months.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And I think that's one of the biggest things now, with especially looking after some younger crew that are coming through, is just sharing that knowledge of, hey, this is going to take a little bit of time. Don't expect it to be, flashy cars and flashy watches within the first year. Don't even expect in the first 5 years. Although it can happen, it's just, you need to get good at doing the same stuff over and over and over. And yes, it is going to be a little bit boring. But however, if you can push through that and find joy in the day-to-day stuff, then I think, you're going to end up in a better position than what you were, 5 years ago.
What kind of positions were you in 5 or 10 years ago? When were those mistakes happening?
Yeah, I mean, as you touched on before, like, I've had the privilege to be able to build businesses pretty much my whole adult life. And some of the biggest lessons have just been in-your-face moments where, you've had either tough clients or tough, environments where, say certain clients have left, or, just having that ability where there's some kind of financial strain on it, that puts you in a position where you're like, shit, I got no choice here but to get better somehow. So it's just, constantly learning and constantly adapting, and never be, kind of happy in the same spot. That's not to mean that you can't be content. It's just like, don't get complacent, because you will get caught out. I think that's sometimes has happened. And I've seen it happen with people around us too, where they, you know, they have a great business, but they get a little bit complacent. And next thing you know, a year later, they're just like, oh, like they're scrambling for new clients, or they're scrambling for new customers. And I think rather than be at a point where you're just constantly happy of there, it's like, hey, in business, everything requires you to grow, or you just, you know, you're going to go backwards. And that's just naturally how it is. So it's just finding that. And I mean happy in the same spot. I mean, like, just don't be complacent, because you will get caught out. There's a lot of people coming after you. There's a lot of competition. So it's like, be the person that is the example of, you know, constantly learning and evolving, because it will pay off in the long run. Plus you feel better for it too.
And what are some of the businesses that you have created throughout this adult life? I mean, I remember years ago I had a vending machine business, and I loved it because at that time it was cruisy, just driving around topping up vending machines, and it was kind of like a sideline gig. Now that's so out of alignment with me of candy and soft drinks and in pubs and gambling areas and things like that. Can't say it was successful in terms of making good money, but it was successful in terms of fun at that stage. But, you know, I've got quite a few examples of that, of things where I've dabbled and then not realizing at the time that I was kind of out of alignment as well. But also I just didn't have that drive because it wasn't in alignment. I didn't have passion and drive to make it really work. What are some of your earlier business? I
did build a great personal training company in my early 20s, actually earlier than that, probably 18, 19, 20. I did have I actually was offered one of the first locations in Melbourne to actually have the first F45 there.
Offered?
Yeah.
Turn it down. F45's not going anywhere, you thought?
Yeah, well, we kind of, you know, again, like right place, right time. I wasn't ready for it. There was no way that I was in a financial position to be able to pull it off. However, it's funny, looking back at the model, it was already what I was kind of doing. And that's why I'd had such a good business, because, you know, we were doing that group training model. It wasn't as big a sessions, but 6 to 8 people regularly, you know, every hour on the hour, like all day. That's one way to teach you how to be like a service-based business where you're basically trading time for money constantly. So, yeah, that was probably one of the biggest ones that really set me up, because inside seeing that, I really started to see the importance of that online model of back in the early days of when Shopify first started and e-commerce. And
what years are we talking there?
So we're like 2004. So
okay.
Yeah, like back then I was kind of teaching myself how to do some really basic kind of coding. So some HTML, just learning how websites worked. And that in hindsight was amazing, because 10 years later I actually started not having to code, because a lot of it was taken care of, but it really put me into a position of being able to create that content marketing model where, you know, people were looking for stuff. Where on earth do you put the content? You know, how on earth do you write a blog? And I think that's only just starting to come to the surface now, because so many people, you know, they want to be able to share their message. They just don't know how to share a message to a lot of people and get some traction. And that's, you know, I just kind of dabbled around with it. Talk about side hustles. I was teaching myself in spare time, and there was no HTML kind of what it is now. You can get blocks and stuff, and you can drag and drop websites and all that kind of stuff. But back then it was nothing. It was just as raw as you could be. If you knew how to do it, you know, you could pull something together. I mean, you look at ChatGPT now, you can basically build a one-page website, you know, with one prompt. So it's funny how far it's come, but it's nice to be able to understand, you know, the stepping stones of where I needed to get to today have all been like back on previous businesses and learning from those, just to try and implement strategies in our current businesses that we were doing like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, interesting. And like you said, ChatGPT now, the artificial intelligence is just skyrocketing everything. Didn't you have a crack at a supplements company as well?
Yeah, I did. We had a supplement company. Again, that was our first e-com kind of business. And that is one way that I learned that if you don't promote and market yourself or your business, there's no way you're going to move 10 grand worth of supplements. So quickly backed into a corner, trying to scramble, you're on a 60 or 90-day term with some of these companies and you're not moving any stuff for the first 60 days, So it's like, how do you actually create the content so that customers will buy from you? And that's where it really started to be like, shit, I need to get good at this, or I'm never going to be good at any business, because when you're backed into a corner, you got no other way to be like, you know what, I have to make this work or otherwise I'm up for a huge bill in the next 15 days.
Interesting. When 2015, I created my first Shopify store and created a floss band because I was working in high performance sport and got to know them overseas, and there was not much of it happening in Australia. So I created my own, went on to Alibaba, got the samples sent over from India and China and a few different places and testing all the different rubbers, and then finally find the right one, got the logos and everything printed on them, shipped in 1,000 of those. And it was a slow move to get through 1,000 of those because I did zero marketing and it was all in person, and then like getting the word of mouth around. So it was really good when I was at the athletics track and people would see it and I'd easily sell them in that kind of way. Looking back at it now, there's no way that I would start it with that in mind. It would be building the community and the need for it first before, especially with a physical product, before then trying to get it in and sell it. But I'm glad I did that. I definitely didn't go backwards with that, although I've still got a bag full of them at home because I did do multiple orders. But taught me a lot about that aspect of it as well. And like it was a sideline hustle, I didn't, require that money, but just that understanding of it's not just enough to buy and sell. There's a whole business strategy and systems and processes and structures to actually make it successful.
It's true. You touched on the vending machines too before. I had a vending machine. We did something in 2004. So again, like almost 20 years ago, where we had a vending machine prototype made. We flew to the middle of China, in Changsha actually. And basically, we were going to create the opposite, which you were talking about before, of candy and stuff. But it was so a 70-inch Pioneer TV screen that was interactive, where the kids would be rewarded for healthy options to do things like push-ups. So it's like if you did 10 push-ups, you would bring the price from $5 down to $1 and you would get, a healthy bar. Anyway, long story short, we got over there and they wanted us to put up, quite a significant sum of money to get these rolled out. And we're talking, like over $1 million to get them all rolled out. We get to Changsha and they haven't even put the TV inside the frame, let alone the computer work to actually get it going. And it was, again, I share that story because it was, we actually physically had to go there. And I share that story because sometimes you do need to physically be around people to get a business happening. And I think so many people, yes, you can rely on online businesses, but however, if you get into your community and start finding those 5 to 10 people or brands that you could work with, you're going to be a hell of a lot better than just trying to start it on your own.
Yeah, well said. And the reason I'm loving chatting about this too is because a lot of people listening to this would either be entrepreneurial and they've got things going on that can resonate, or they've got a job or a business and they want or they have also a sideline hustle, which is really common these days too. What I'd love to understand from you with early days of business and business now, when you're in around people who are successful in business, so the leaders, the owners or CEOs of large companies, what are some of the common challenges that you find with those people as individuals, not the businesses themselves and their systems and processes, but with the leaders and the owners? What are some common challenges that you see?
Some of them, I'm lucky enough to be around, some really kind of health conscious and very much similar to us. They take care of themselves. But on the other side, I also have some up and coming ones. I actually just shared a blog about this morning, where you don't have to be unhealthy in building business. And unfortunately, I see that sometimes where people try and chase a goal and then they forget about everything else. We were talking about this last week, where you're just so focused on getting there that everything else is around you is just trash. And I just don't think that is a good long-term strategy, because business isn't the be-all end-all of your life. Like, yes, it's important, and yes, it's, you need to make money and cover all those things. However, I think there's certain things that a lot of the business, these are the challenges that people find is, do they feel guilty when they go to P3? You know, do they feel guilty when they go to the ice bath? And I share this as like, you shouldn't really feel guilty. Like, you're actually looking after yourself to be a better leader in your environments when it does get a little bit stressful. And I just think, you know, for a small amount of output that you need to do every week, you should factor that into the week. And one of the biggest things that I see, especially with some close to me, is they don't make that time to look after themselves. And it does come back, unfortunately, when it is a little bit too late. Yep. And this is one of the things that we spoke about as building out my personal brand this year. I wanted to try and get this into younger people first to try and help them from saving them making the mistakes in their 30s and 40s, which again, they're still young, but it's just they put good practices in as they're building their business, so it just becomes normal. As opposed to not feeling bad. Like the amount of people that come into P3 and they're like, oh, I feel bad for being in the boots today. And I'm like, you could do some work. Like, why don't you just do a little half an hour?
You got the recovery boots on.
Yeah, well, it's like when you share the stories in the sauna, you know, like you just got to figure out ways to make it. But I just don't think you need to feel guilty around it, because you're looking after yourself. So that would be probably one of the biggest challenges that I see, you know, especially for us that, you know, align with that kind of health and performance thing, is getting them to understand you don't need to feel guilty to try and look after yourself, because you are going to be a better leader in the long run.
Brilliant. And that's so in alignment with my philosophies. And what I find with people is, so most of my demographic are middle-aged, mostly men between 35 and 55, and they've gone after the career or the business and not necessarily fully neglected health pillars, but definitely not given them the focus that is required to help them thrive. And so now they're trying to pick up the pieces in those regards. And I love working with guys like that, because they come to me and go, right, I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm feeling this midlife mediocrity that you talk about. You know, I'm feeling de-energized and uninspired, and I don't like it. I want to do something about it. Awesome. Doors are open. Very good. And let's start to work there, because what you said there is what I also realized too is one of the most common challenges is that ability for people to actually factor it in to their work life because of either guilt or they've got themselves so busy. So a lot of the work that I do with people is say, this is not a program to learn about these cool things that could work. This is a way of life. And let's find examples of business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs that are doing this and doing really well in business and doing amazing things in the community. And let's focus on them, because there is millions of examples of people who are successful in business and CEOs who are not doing great things in community and certainly not looking after their health, but they're doing really well financially. Yep, absolutely. And if you focus on that and think that's the only way, then that's what you're going to keep moving towards. So let's focus on the things that are on the examples of this, like what you were saying, people going into the recovery center and ice baths and actually making time for movement and having breathing breaks, like breathwork breaks in your work environment, and really making this part of the normalcy of successful business or career.
Oh, I mean, it's huge. I mean, you touch on it. It's just, you're preaching to the converted pretty much. And I think like one of the biggest things, which you just touched on, those breath work and sauna, they require no talent. So you could get your team to do it if you wanted to.
Yep.
Like
the ripple effect.
Yeah. Like it's like be the leader or be the example of those that would follow in your footsteps. And I think, as you said, like chasing financial is awesome. However, you know, you've got relationships, you've also got your work, and you've also got, you know, people around you that are watching you as well. And is that all you want to be known for? And if it is, that's fine. However, there's other people that are probably relying on you for other things, relationships and your purposeful work, how you are in the community. And again, like it's just kind of keeping it balanced, but it's never always completely balanced. And that's what I always say. If you're trying to chase something, something's got to give somewhere. So it's just being aware of what's giving to bring yourself back into alignment.
Absolutely. And I spoke about on the last episode about more of harmony as opposed to balance to get those results. One thing I want to pick up on though, that language is the chase aspect. And what was really good for me, so coming out of high performance sport and being on a salary, but also having the sideline and gigs happening, selling a product, doing coaching on the side, I then transitioned and went 100% out on my own and had to make everything work. And one of the things that I learned after a period of time was I was chasing the money, but I was still doing what I love with the coaching, but I was also feeling like I was chasing money. when that was identified to me and I did the work around that and went deep and did some reprogramming, some subconscious reprogramming on that. And since then, it'd be the last sort of 5 years, changed my beliefs, probably 4 years, that money is a byproduct of me living in alignment. So me living in alignment is my health pillars first, my relationships, and then the impact and the giving through the work that I do. So if I look at my day and the amount of time that I spend looking after myself and supporting my gorgeous wife and my kids, and also the work that I do, sometimes some areas outweigh the others. But there's times where I think, wow, I could actually be doing way more coaching. And there's certain things that I'm not doing in the business that could definitely be bringing in more money. But it's also like I actually don't have the time to do it because I'm choosing to spend that time with my gorgeous wife, my kids, or on my health. And I'm more than okay with that because my belief is that money is just energy and it's just a byproduct of me living in alignment. So I see this steady growth because I'm not chasing the growth, the business, and the powerful thing is the community that's building around and watching the ripple effect of the energy and the changes through their life. And I'm like, this is enriching. And yes, the financial aspects are growing, but it's just a byproduct. The more that I live in alignment, the more that gradually grows in the way that feels right for me as well.
And I think touching on that as well is, our to-do lists never get any smaller, and I think, one of the things that I did mention in today's, actually it was last week's blog, was learning how to say no to stuff, especially when you are in business, because the more levels that you go up, the more opportunities you're going to get thrown your way. And I think, saying yes to a lot of things is it's not a toxic behavior, but it can become very toxic if you start saying yes to a lot of stuff because suddenly everyone's after you. So I think learning how to put boundaries in place, we speak about this, is just putting those boundaries in place around when people can contact you, for work stuff, when people can contact you, via email. Like these kind of practices are good to get in early because it can spiral out of control if you're not onto it straight away. But as you said, it's just putting those boundaries in place to get to a point where, we could be doing more, but do we have to be doing more?
That's what I say. There's always more to do. Always. Like you said, the to-do list doesn't get any smaller and there's always areas that we could refine in the business that could generate more. There's always more to do. So you get to choose. Are you going to do more on that? Or are you going to do more on yourself and your personal life to help you flourish on the other side of that? One of the things I'd be really interested to see if you've come across this a lot or at all in less of the up and comers, but more of the established entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders. It's kind of this philosophy, if I was to put language to it, is it's lonely at the top. A challenge that I come across a lot with the business owners and leaders, it's lonely at the top. And they might not use that language, but essentially they don't have people around them that they can share their challenges with. If they were to talk with their staff and their team about the fears and the internal dialogue and the challenges and the doubt and the worry and the concern and the shame and the things that are spiraling in their mind, then they would be maybe that would weaken the team or it would make them look weak or it might weaken the business. So a lot of the guys that I work with is that they don't really have an outlet of that. And often when they do have the outlet, when we start to talk about it and they get around other guys that are experiencing similar challenges and they hear that expressed and they realize, oh, okay. And what it often is it's not the truth. It's just the stories that have been created and those stories lead to more. Is that something that you've experienced being around other successful leaders?
Absolutely. And you hit that nail on the head. It's just, I think other entrepreneurs, other business owners, even other CEOs should hang out with other CEOs. And I think coming back to those practices around the weekly or daily non-negotiables that you have, whether it's through movement, spending time in nature, go and do it with other business owners because they can actually relate to you, and I think creating that, we spoke about a mutual friend before this podcast. It's like creating that coffee club or creating that workout club where you get to hang out, where you're spending time away from your businesses, you're connecting with another business owner or CEO or whoever it is, and you can actually share some of the struggles without sounding like a weirdo or without like bringing your guard down, because to be honest, they're probably gone through the same. And that's one of the beautiful things about working with different brands in different industries. It's the same problems over and over and over in the leadership teams. It's the same politics, the same doubt, the same fear. It's just, you know, it'd be nice if I could one day just eventually just grab all those teams and bring them all together, you know, and actually be like, look, guys, you've all got exactly the same problems. Like, it's okay. But I think, as you said, it's just important to have people to lean on. And I think, yes, lonely at the top is to a certain extent, like especially if you're, you know, the established guys generally have people they can rely on. But it's like, don't choose not to be alone all the time. You know, like just choose to spend time with someone. Again, if you're carving, you know, your workouts out every week, get someone to come do a workout with you. And, you know, like I ran with a very, very awesome business owner last week, and I've wanted to just spend some time with him. And I know that he runs and I've seen him run, and I just literally sent him a text and I was like, hey, do you want to go for a run next week at 5:30? That's all I said. And he's like, let's do it. And we went through a different path somewhere he'd never been before. And, you know, afterwards we went and had an ice bath together. And this is a guy that has a very busy schedule. However, he carved out, we spent 2 hours together.
Brilliant.
We ran, we had an ice bath, and we had coffee. I was like, you know, if more people just did that, and it doesn't have to be every week or every day, but just do it regularly, it does bring some of the weight off your shoulders down and helps you realize that you're not the only one going through some of these issues.
Yeah, massively well said. And that's a big part of why I've created the tribe with the guys that I work with is we get together for fortnightly Zoom calls. And then just this morning, 6:30 a.m, I was on the beach for a group of the guys that live around this area. And often those calls and those chats are around just expressing the challenges. Anyone else going through that? Yep, cool. All right. Let's not even have if there's not a solution for it, let's not try and come up with it here, but let's just let that weight be shed. And then if there is someone that might step in and say, I went through that, you know what helped me? Like, I'm not saying this is what you have to do, but here's what helped me. And so sharing those experiences to help them get through those challenges is really empowering. And the nature piece, you're a big lover of nature. Well, how does that play out in supporting people or you personally, but how can you see that playing out in supporting other business owners and leaders?
I think one of the biggest things around just spending time in nature is the natural ability to just recharge. You know, you see it all over the internet and here it is, but yeah, it works in real life, you know. So if you get a chance to just put your phone down for 15 minutes and literally just take a walk, I think you'll do some of your best thinking, some of your best creativity. Heck, you might just even have 15 minutes off from a busy day. So I think, you know, utilizing the environments to be able to do that definitely has a part in, you know, in business, but also your own personal life too. You know, you mentioned around kids and you watch kids in nature. It's just like they climb all over trees and stuff.
That's me. When I get in nature, I still love climbing trees.
I think there's nothing wrong with us either. That's where I was going with that. It's like, you know, maybe just be a kid for a little bit, you know, even if it is a few hours a day, a few minutes a day, just to try and get yourself back into those elements. And it doesn't mean you have to find a national park 3 hours away. It's like, just go for a swim in the ocean. Like, you know, take a walk through like a park, like just be around trees and grass and all that kind of stuff so that you can actually recharge from your day, because your body will thank you for it. Your head will thank you for it. And to be honest, just put the phone away for like 15 minutes. Like, it's amazing how many people you see walking through these areas that have constantly got their heads in their phone. And I'm lucky enough to run through some awesome places, but I'm like, if only you took your headphones out and just were at peace or present. You know, I get that people have stuff and they use it to make calls. However, it's the same people over and over and over with their heads in their phones. It's just like, look up, look left, look right, there's the sunrise. Like, so I think, you know, nature has come a part of business now, because I think it's a really good way to get your team to do stuff. I mean, we've seen walking meetings now. You know, we've seen, you know, ways that people can actually tap into the environments around them to actually make them feel good. And I think that's starting to creep into business now, which I think is a really, really good thing moving forward, to just give people a bit of a break.
And speaking of moving too, do you believe that having physical challenges for people and overcoming physical challenges, and it doesn't have to be 33 marathons in 33 days, it doesn't even have to be one marathon, but some kind of physical challenges in their life, planned and supported, helps them to be better entrepreneurs and business owners and leaders?
That's actually a really good question. And I often think about this. Again, you know, you don't have to run ultra marathons or do anything like that. But one of the biggest things I find about doing a race of, say, like 10 to 12 hours is I'm with my thoughts the entire time, and nothing really stresses me out anymore from the facts of learning and going through those basically really physical, demanding challenges. Now, I'm not saying you have to go out and run 10 hours. However, I definitely think that more people need to do more hard things from a physical environment. Maybe it's, you know, try and do 10 burpees. You know, maybe it's just try and do a hard workout once a week. Like, it's having that ability to do stuff and look forward to it, because if you don't have your phone and you're not distracted, you physically have to be present. Otherwise, you're just going to get eaten alive. You know, it's too hard. You know, do I need to stop now? It's like, no, you don't. It's just like you're overcoming this. And I find a lot of the lessons I learned from, you know, doing these big races is I'm actually able to use them in business. I'm a hell of a lot more calm. I'm way less reactive. And when shit does hit the fan, it's not an issue. It's like, all right, let's just have some calm between the chaos and try and come up with a solution.
How do you create calm between the chaos?
I think communication's a big one. It's also listening to people. And again, shit happens. That's just part of life, you know, and especially in business, stuff goes wrong, you know, especially in our business when it comes to online and people are reliant on stuff around websites and things go offline. It's stressful. You know, you've got customers that rely on you for feedback. However, I think if you can figure out a way to get comms out and just listen to some of these approaches, it'll allow, you know, a sense of calm. And I think most people, if you've got an angry customer, just listen to what they're saying, because generally they have some kind of feedback that you could probably improve. You may not like it at the start, but however, if you look back on enough feedback, I'm not saying people that personally attack you because if something's gone wrong, it's just listening to them. And if you listen to enough feedback, then generally you can come up with a solution for it. In team environments, it's listening to everyone and giving them a bit of a platform, because I find that if people actually speak and talk about how they're feeling, I think it does bring a level of respect, and everyone can walk away going, yeah, maybe they did have a shit day today and I could have been a bit better. And I think that's really important, of just being able to listen, you know, without interrupting them.
So powerful. In one of the modules I do, it's communication mastery, and we talk about crystal clear communication. And the first thing is active listening. So people think about communicating, being able to talk and body language, and actually no, it's the ability to listen with the intent to understand and not with the intent to respond, and actually let that person be heard. It's a really big skill. And, you know, all human beings, whether we know it or not, want to be seen, heard and felt. So when someone in your team is being heard, seen and felt, then they are actually feeling like more of part of the team. They're going to get more done. They're going to be more open. You're going to feel that more of connection. So I love that. What's the crossover between your running and leading businesses and being a part of businesses in terms of that calmness?
I think if you don't control your thoughts in something like a big ultra marathon, you're going to get eaten alive.
Talk to me more about that. Like when you're running, because when I run, and you know, the furthest I've run is 14 Ks. I did the City to Surf once with my grandparents years ago.
Yeah.
And I did a 90 kilometre ski race last year in Sweden.
Oh, nice.
And it took 7 hours and 11 minutes, lots of pain. But the ability to be able to actually run the amount of kilometres that you do, and I'm sure there's thoughts that come into your mind of, what the fuck are you doing? This is painful. This hurts. Where did your mind go then? How do you control those kind of thoughts?
Yeah, it's good. I think, you know, and it's actually really good to bring up, because a lot of people would tune out by, you know, listening to music and trying to distract themselves. And I'm not saying that that's not a good strategy, because sometimes it is. And sometimes you do need to have a little bit of external. If you've got some music or something that you like listening to, then by all means go for it. However, I think you need to get to a certain point where you've got to actually lean into how those thoughts are, because that is a really, really good way that you're going to grow. And I think those negative creeping thoughts and these kind of things will get to you at some stage. You've just got to be like, okay, yeah, it's all good. Like, I know that my mind's wants me to stop, or, you know, it's like working from, you know, if you want to bring the best analogy, it's like looking at an ultra distance race and breaking it down to checkpoints. And most people should do that for their life, and then how their business is. It's like, look for where you want to go and then build it backwards. You need to get to 20Ks, 40Ks, 60Ks, 80Ks. And the beautiful thing about ultra marathons, it's just like doing a 20K run with a buffet every 20Ks. So it's like, it's looking for those little internal kind of gifts, I think, and moments of joy, as opposed to, you know, just trying to be like, I'm just trying to block it out. It's also, we came back to it at the start of just finding the joy of one of the biggest things that I love about ultra distance racing and ultra endurance is I have the ability to be out there when so many other people don't. So I constantly think of that all the time when it does get a little bit tough, because I'm like, you know, I put myself in these positions. You know, I don't have to. I choose to be in these positions because it does make me feel alive. It does put me in environments where I do have to problem solve, and it does actually allow me to try and be with my thoughts and try and keep calm, because if I don't, it's a very, very long day out there if you don't know how to control what's going on between your ears.
Would you say that that's what stops a lot of people rather than the actual physical aspect, that it's the self-talk and focusing on the pain becomes more negative self-talk, and that's what ends up being the blocker?
I think so. And you know, it's very, you can observe it a lot when you run with someone for their first, say, long run. You know, if someone's never ran 2 hours before, I'm not going to sugarcoat and say, hey, this is going to be like easy. I'm going to be like, this is going to be awful. Like, your body's going to go to a point where it has no idea what it's doing. You're going to have thoughts that are just like, but at the end of the day, it's like you're going to feel probably pretty good half an hour afterwards, or maybe go and have a nap. Maybe not schedule too much stuff in during the day. However, that's not always the case, but it's like, you know, instead of sugarcoating it and make it be like, oh yeah, you know, like it's going to be easy. It's just like, no, this is going to be hard. And you're going to go through many like ebbs and flows. It's going to be times where it's like amazing, and there's going to be times where it's absolutely shit house. And I think that's the same with business too. It's what I teach some of these guys up and coming. It's like, you're going to have times of joy and you're going to have times where it's awful. However, it's just a roller coaster that you just need to get used to, because that's just how it is.
How's the self-talk for me with the ski race? I did, the longest I'd done before that day was 3.5 hours. And so as soon as I hit 3.5 hours, I thought, I'm not going to let my mind go there. As soon as I hit that, I'm like, fuck, I've never been here before. Can I handle this? Can I handle this? It wasn't long after that I started getting my first cramps. The strategy for me, I went no music, no podcast, nothing in my headphones, because some of the areas are just beautiful. I was looking around with that gratitude of how magic is this, going through the Swedish wilderness. It was one of those perfect days. There's people having parties on snowmobiles along the side and fires and cheering and everything, and some good vibes. And then you're in the wilderness, and one of the things that worked well for me was on my skis, I had some names of people. I put white tape and wrote their names on there. And there was my grandparents who were tragically killed years ago, who I anchor into. There was my gorgeous wife, who was a 20-kilometre race walker, and just knowing her strength to get through challenging times, plus everything else. And there was also my late mate Chumpy, who had passed away, and his philosophy was all in. So when my head would just go to, oh man, I don't know, like these cramps are getting pretty bad. I don't know if you're going to make it. I'd look down, and it would just be a perspective shift straight away when I would see those names on my skis, and it just allowed me to go, this is fucking nothing.
Yep.
Like, this is nothing. And then straight away then I was like, cool, this is nothing. And so the ability, just a strategy like that helped me shift my mindset, because I know the power of the mind. I could easily buy into all of those thoughts and then either bail out or rest for too long or something like that.
I think it's good that you put that actually right. I always put the number 1 on my hand when I race, because I just take 1 kilometre at a time, because I know the difference between Ks can be huge. So it's just like, you know, again, it's all looking at the names that you said. You know, sometimes you can, like, it's just a nice way to put things in perspective. And I think that's one of the biggest things around what you spoke about in your ski race is you put things in perspective when it does get hard, because it's easy just to consume it and be like, it just eats you alive. And touching back onto what you were saying before, I do believe that's one of the reasons why people don't finish a lot of stuff, because it just gets their self-talk just becomes too much, and they never really go to push through that next level, which, you know, ultimately that's where your growth's going to be. Just get
such a good crossover into the business side or the career side of striving for those next levels too, like that 1 kilometre at a time. If we think back to what we said there, where billionaires think in decades. And so if you go, all right, decade, and then you look at your 1 kilometre milestones to each of those, and knowing that it's not that straight line to get there. And also the self-talk that comes into it, the amount of times, even for me but everyone I work with, of, fuck, I'm not sure if I've done the right thing here, not sure if this is going to work, like what have I done, I'm a fraud or I'm a failure, whatever it might be, if things aren't working out. You know, I have those thoughts sometimes as well, and the ability then to just go, hang on, this is just a fucking story. Like let's get back to process, plus have the right support around us, get back onto trajectory.
Well, it's, you know, like my last race was in New Zealand last month, you know, 100 Ks around Tarawera, and I had something which I have never experienced before. Now, we do a lot of training runs between 6 and 7 hours in different kinds of trails. I get to test all my nutrition. However, at 25 Ks in this race, I cramped like one I've never cramped before, and I could not keep any of my nutrition down.
Ooh.
And so
And how was it coming out?
Yeah,
through the mouth?
Yeah, just
Okay.
I couldn't stomach it. I couldn't even eat it. So I practiced with this stuff. Like nothing's changed. So I went straight into problem solving mode. I was literally about to jump in the lake because I thought I need to like have a shift somehow. I was thinking of like, what do I do? So I was like walking, but you know, when you get cramps, I had both quads and both calves. So every time I'd take a step.
It wasn't a walk, it was a waddle.
It was a waddle. And, you know, in saying that, it was like, all right, now instead of a K, I was working in like 100 meters. I was working in 100-meter increments because I knew that if I could just get myself to the next checkpoint and have a vast array of like foods and things, I could try and see which foods I could keep down. And those foods ended up being watermelon and pizza, and that's what I did the next 75 Ks on. Now, I don't train with watermelon, and I definitely don't have pizza at my disposal when you're out in the middle of the national parks or the trails. So it was like...
Hang on, aren't you a part owner in a pizza shop? Surely you could pre-order them and take them with you.
But it was just like, you know, figuring out what on earth you needed to do in that position, and you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got no support. Surely there's people running past you, but you can't be like, oh, have you got this? Like, no one's going to have a slice of pizza in the back. So I had to try and figure out how on earth we could get to the next checkpoint. And so that's all I did. So I went from 1K down to 100-meter increments, and I got there, and then I ended up finished the race in, you know, a great time. I finished, you know, strong. I finished healthy. However, I just had to do things a little different than what I'd normally done in training, and I didn't panic. Like, that was one of the biggest things I noticed. I was calm in a very probably stressful environment going, I got 75 Ks to go here. Like, I need to figure out what on earth I can get in, because there's no way that you can get 75 Ks without eating anything. So just trial and testing some stuff, and watermelon and pizza seemed to be the hit, and that's what got me over the finish line.
Classic. Yeah. Working with my wife with the race walkers and seeing the way that, and you know, they're only doing 20 Ks. The men used to do 50 Ks. I say only, but in comparison to 100 K, but pushing quite hard as well, and just seeing the challenges of actually being able to stomach food, and they would have like maybe a little bit of brekkie, but just the gels over those periods of time and different things. But just that, the testing, I think what I want to pick up on there is that, and working in high performance sport too, that we would, if there's something we're going to do in competition or in a game, when I work with the footy teams or at a Paralympic Games in a, you know, competition, we don't do it in competition if we haven't trialed and tested and practiced that a lot in the training environment, in the controlled environment. So foods and different things like that as well, and training techniques and warm-up routines, and even the music that they'll listen to and the playlists and everything like that. So corresponding that into our everyday lives, I think, is a really good thing too, because sometimes people think, oh shit, I've heard that could work really well. Let's do that. Like, let's chuck that into the mix of this business or in with this meeting and just see how it goes. It's like, no, let's create the controlled environment, test things in a controlled environment. That's when we know that we can handle it when the pressure's on. And I use that analogy too with things that I do around breathing techniques. So with people, let's practice it in a controlled environment, so that when you get stressed, you can use the breathing to bring the stress response down. How much of, I know that you use Whoop and measure your heart rate variability and breathing techniques and ice baths and things like that. How much of what you do for your training do you do for what you do in business, and also support other leaders and entrepreneurs to take those health practices, like we talked about looking after ourselves, but those other measurable things and other practices to support them in their professional lives?
Yeah, I think it's good. And I think one of the biggest things is there isn't a one size fits all approach for everyone, you know, because what we do doesn't necessarily mean that's how someone else is going to thrive. And I think if you can let go of that early rather than trying to, you know, force people into do a certain way, or, you know, I made a decision 4 years ago to go completely plant-based once I saw my blood work. I have absolutely no problems with people eating meat. I have, I encourage people to do whatever they need to. However, I know for myself, that's what works, you know, really, really well. I feel the best that I've felt in years, and my performance is awesome. So it's like, okay, that's what I do. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that too. However, that was years of trial and error and figuring out what worked, what didn't work, subtracting foods. So again, that's just what I do. And if you want to try that, awesome. And if you don't want to try that, that's still awesome too. It's just trying to figure out what works. And you see, like, social media is nasty when it comes to this stuff. It's like, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do this. This is bad, this is good, this is, you know, this is toxic. So it's just like, where the hell do you start?
It's confusing for people.
So it's like just trying to find, okay, hey, this is what's worked really, really well for me, but sharing the lessons of what didn't work that well. And this is how I did it. And I think if we can go back to the times where I struggled a little bit to try and figure out what on earth was working, I think that can be a really nice lesson for people just to tap into, for them to understand that, hey, you can actually trial stuff. We're talking about before around, you know, trial stuff before you get to, you know, the big presentation. Don't be doing a big presentation if you've never, you know, practiced that stuff before. If you've never set up your computer and your laptop and you suddenly got 600 people relying on you to do a presentation, like, practice what that looks like first so you know what to go through. So it's not as stressful when you get up on stage and stuff's not working.
Mate, you just reminded me about 6 years ago when I ran a workshop and set the projector up for the first time and it didn't work.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just, again, like, but sometimes, as like with that example, is you just need to do that to actually learn. And I think there's real beauty in just putting yourself into a deep end and just figuring out how the hell to swim, you know? So coming back to what we were saying, it's just like trying to figure out ways that work for you and kind of share those lessons, but also don't be hard on people that look at stuff to do another way. It's okay to not agree with someone. It doesn't mean you need to hate them, hate on them, or disrespect them. It's just their view or their way of doing stuff is different to yours. And I think that's okay. Like, social media, I see so many people just kind of keyboard bashing each other. And I'm like, you've got so much time in the day to do something so much more productive. You know, maybe just have a chat with that person privately and kind of talk to them about how you're feeling, because I'm pretty sure they'd be pretty open to having a discussion. You know, so it's just, again, trialing all those things, finding what works, making them part of your daily or weekly life and practice. And then if you get a chance to be able to share it with others on what's working, don't be scared to just share, hey, this is what works. But if they go another way, you know, you don't have to be disrespectful.
Yeah, well said. Love that. Speaking of trialing and error, what about taping your mouth shut at night? What was the clear indications to continue with that?
We come back to Whoop and stuff, and I saw my sleep data and, you know, having basically, I think it's close to 40% REM from taping my mouth shut. So I was like, well, there's a clear indication that I do get a better sleep. It is a bit weird for most people to get their head around that, but I do believe in just try it if you want to. Again, I saw the data and I was like, there's no way I can go back now. And that was enough for me. I didn't need anyone's opinions. I was like, I can see what it is. Plus, I wake up and I feel amazing. And I was like, that's just an indication on its own. Even if I took this off, if I wake up and I feel good every day, like, that's enough for me.
Yeah, I've floated between the devices and come back to like really just heightened awareness. And it's probably between 4 and 5 years ago when I started, I used the chin strap to keep my mouth shut at night.
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't measure it at that time, but just felt the difference straight away. And so since then I've been using it, and it's something that I get my clients to explore. Same sort of thing. It's like, you don't have to do this, but here's how it's worked for me and many other people. To know that it improves your heart rate variability, which increases your oxygenation, which improves so many systems and processes in your body, which is going to energize you and help to minimize those flat spots, and good for recovery, obviously. Even if people aren't training really hard, the recovery from their work days and their family stresses into the next days.
And I think that's really important to touch on too is, you shouldn't really be reliant on a lot of this stuff. Again, like if you wake up and you feel good, or you eat foods that make you feel good, like for me, that's enough. But I think people are so far down from their baseline. They're so far underneath their baseline that getting to feel normal is like amazing. But it's just, we know, it's like you feel normal. It's like, it's good. And then you can start stacking stuff. But I believe if people just made some better choices and did a few extra little things, their days would be a hell of a lot easier to try and, manage. I'm not saying it's going to be simple, but I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it'd be a hell of a lot more simple to just get back to just doing some of those practices to just keep yourself feeling good. Like, you just want people to feel good every day. Like, even on the days where it's stressful, you want to wake up the next day going, you know what, yesterday was shit and today I've woken up and I feel good, and it's like open book, let's go again.
Love that. One of my clients yesterday actually was saying, I've only been working with him for 7 weeks, and he's had ulcerative colitis and been given medication and everything for that in the past. And he said, I'm due to see the specialist again, and I know that he wants to change up my medication, but I've actually stopped taking it just recently because I feel better than I've ever felt before. So around the nutrition pillars and what we've brought in place there, he's feeling, I said, brilliant, go with what you feel. Let's continue this for a little bit. It's obviously working really well. Get your bloods done again to be able to take to the specialist to say, this is why I don't need it. Like, this is actually working for me. So but his ability to make that choice based on how he really felt that's a win to me. That's the empowerment that when I work with people, I say, I want to empower you to be able to know and feel and then make your own choices. Like, get myself to a point where you don't need me. You shouldn't need someone in the first place. It's like that support, but where you know and you trust yourself to base it on that feel. I remember working with a demographic years ago, and I was doing a holistic wellbeing workshop, and that specific demographic, one of my mates rang me and he said, Robbo, just remember, the people that you're about to go and talk to, they'll have no idea. They will have never felt the energy levels that you have on a regular basis. So just remember that their baseline, like what you said, will be a lot lower. So you got to really understand that and empathize with that. And I thought, yeah, you're right. Like, okay, cool. I get that. I don't expect people to be at a level straight away. However, to give them the dangle of the carrot to say, this is what's available. Here's the choices that you can make from greater energy in your relationship, in your career or your business, with yourself and your hobbies, the trajectory of that, and that'll support everything that you're already doing. It's quite a phenomenal thing when people actually start to feel that.
Yeah, and I think just diving into that too, like, don't be scared to touch on that, because it's a beautiful feeling when you do get to wake up and you do feel fresh every day. Or, you do go to sleep and you actually have a quality sleep, as opposed to waking up in the middle of the night with all these crazy thoughts.
Or with toddlers.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Well, it's going to handle you. It's going to help you handle all that stuff too, And I think that's what we've spoken about a lot of this is just get those daily non-negotiables right, because they will help you when the times where it does get a little stressful. It's inevitable. You just want to be able to deal with it better.
Absolutely. I just want to come back to the ice bath, because I'm addicted to it and have been for a lot of years. And the times when we spend in Sweden, I jump into the ice lakes. We cut a big hole and it's just picturesque. Since coming back here and got the membership at P3, the recovery centre around the corner, I love it. And sometimes I've got the luxury, like after this, I'm meeting a mate there and we're actually having a date in the sauna and then the ice bath.
Perfect.
And so I love using it like that. But I also love it because in this little area where I am, I'll, drop the kids off, do a quick ice bath before I come and record a podcast, or drop the kids off at daycare, do a training session. I've got a coaching session, and then I'll jump in the ice bath just for the 4 minutes in the ice bath, and I can go again. I get the dopamine hit, I get the noradrenaline. It just makes me alert. I don't use it for recovery as much as I use it for that. So you being in there and education being a huge thing, why, I'm not going to say should, hang on, let me rephrase this. How can people who don't want to use those places for recovery, how can they benefit?
Yeah, and it's a really good question. I mean, it's called P3 recovery. However, one of the best things, and this is how we've built a community, is how you leave afterwards is the biggest indication of success for us. Because if you've got a business owner or a parent or, you know, someone that's gone through a hard day and they walk into that place and they may not feel the best, but they walk out feeling better, like that on its own is a win. Yeah, sports recovery and athletes have used this stuff for years. However, it's the mental well-being of, as you said, that dopamine hit, or just the ability to change state, you know, is quite a shock for some people. And I think if you can get through your day where you change state regularly, like you're probably going to have different chapters of your day, and therefore you can just deal with different stuff a little bit better. And, you know, there's many people that go in there that don't train, you know, like they're not training for certain events, or they're just in there every day because again, it makes them feel good. There's some old boys that come in there in the mornings and they'll do like 20 or 25 minutes just in the cold pool, you know, like, and they're just chatting to each other. It's like, and then you see some people come in for the first time, they can't get past their ankle. So it's just a different kind of awareness. And to be honest, social media does get a lot of hate, but however, I think it's great that the message is being shared out there. Take what you want from all the different people doing the ice bars. However, I think it's really good that people are getting the message around cold and heat does have a lot of benefit to it. And obviously, Susanna Soberg's work out of Denmark has been awesome with regards to the threshold of 11 minutes of cold and 56 minutes of sauna every week.
That's over different sessions, isn't it?
Different sessions. So, I mean,
11 minutes total of cold over the week.
I mean, that's so achievable for someone that is on a schedule and has commitments. And I think, you know, if you can just tap into that as being your threshold, awesome. Like, just start there.
Yeah.
Because as you said, you do get addicted to how you're feeling. And I think, you know, most people, if they're aware of it or not, they do come back because of that feeling. And I think that's one of the biggest things around P3 is just creating that community of people that actually feel good, getting back to that feel good again.
And that feel good for people listening is like the dopamine hit is a real thing. Like, it's a feel good hormone, and we need it. And there's healthy ways to get those hits as opposed to scrolling through social media or addictions. I've actually helped people transition from addictions into like using ice baths as one of those things, and breath work to get the dopamine hits in that natural kind of way. And it draws them away from the addictions where they were previously escaping to get those dopamine hits. So, but back to the feel good part is that's why I know I feel good. Like, there's a neurochemical change, the way that we operate as human beings. So that's an easy one for me to understand. But what about for people, what's the kind of longer term effects too of this 11 minutes and the sauna of 56 minutes? Yeah,
I think, you know, the study comes back to, you know, brown fat and that ability of, you know, working through those, you know, different states of environment of like where your head's at. But, you know, physiological, it comes back to a lot of the brown, you know, you've lived in Sweden. I'm sure there was people swimming there in the middle of winter. You know, there's obviously a lot of health benefits of that regularly for different people to get into. And I think, you know, the consistency of it is what's really important here. I think, you know, don't just go for a couple of weeks and then stop. Just include it as a practice that allows you to, again, just achieve those dopamine hits over and over and over, because physiologically, obviously it's going to help you as well. You start to adapt to better. One of the biggest things that I do notice is people are constantly in environments like air conditioning and heated cars and heaters. And whilst that's cool or hot, it's just like you're really bringing down, you know, your body's ability to actually regulate itself. And to be honest, I think that's one of the biggest things that we find with, you know, a weaker society. And I say that respectfully. I'm not saying It is, but it really does. When you look at the data and how that works, it really does bring down your body's ability to actually self-regulate itself. And I think, you know, we're lucky enough where we live where it's pretty much warm all the time. People are like, you don't have cold showers there. And, you know, I get that. However, you know, I know a lot of guys and girls that live in snow environments that are constantly cold. And then, you know, in summertime, they're constantly chasing heat. So it's like they probably sleep the best. And there's just some real kind of method to the madness there of looking into that, because I think, you know, your body's ability to self-regulate itself is something that's so important that we've just lost touch with, because everywhere is comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're constantly in comfort of aircon and we're constantly in heat to warm up, or it's just like, maybe just let your body do its thing. You know, it's very good at doing that. It has done that for a long time. So don't try and shy away from it. Sure, you know, if it is a hot day and you need some aircon, I'm not saying like don't jump in aircon, and just be aware of it if you are working in it all day, that when you do, you know, put yourself in these environments, it probably is going to feel a little bit more extreme because your body started to, you know, draw back on its natural kind of regulation. And I think that's something that I wrote down in a building resilience kind of checklist the other day. It's just like spend less time in aircon for most people because they're constantly in environments that are like comfortable. So I think that's one of the biggest things of coming back to the ice bath is, yes, it never gets any easier. And if you've never done any breath work or stuff, like it is one way that you'll seriously figure out how to be present, because if you don't, it's fucking cold.
Massively.
So it's like just constantly be aware of that yes, even people like you and I have days where it is a little bit harder to get through. It's just we've figured out a way to actually get through that first minute by most of the time it is that breath work. And I think if you can combine cold and breath together, it's a very, very powerful conversation that you can take into your everyday life.
Yeah, massively. It's the combo. And some days I'll go in there to test my nervous system, I'll go into breathing patterns of seeing how long I can do the inhale for and then how long I can do the exhale for. And I know that if I can't get past 12 seconds of inhaling, exhaling within 4 minutes, my nervous system is shot. And that's generally the days when I've had consecutive days of kids waking me up and like big days of coaching and everything like that. But when I can get to 18, 20 seconds inhale and exhale, so it's smooth and gentle diaphragmatic breathing without a breath hold, that's when I know, cool, I'm really on point here. And that I feel always still feel energized even when my nervous system is shot after being in there, because I'm still getting the dopamine and the noradrenaline, but also then mindful of, okay, I'm actually going to need a bit of extra recovery today and take the foot off the pedal a little bit because the nervous system is challenged. So it's a really good test for me too to see where I'm at, as well as getting those benefits.
Yeah, and I think you touching on that as well as, and we come back to that at the start, is it's not just for recovery. You know, it's a part of our daily practice. And I think that's one of the big things that most people can take away is, you know, just putting yourself into there daily to get that hit as opposed to scrolling on social media.
Yeah, brilliant. Any other kind of crazy or wacky or out there different things that you do to look after yourself that people might not have heard of? I'll give you an example for mine. It's not crazy and wacky, but something I love doing is laying on the Shakti mat, so the spike mat.
Nice, yeah.
Just straight onto the spikes, and then have the infrared panel beside me. So we're in Sweden. We didn't have access to the infrareds as much. Didn't have P3 around the corner. And then doing breath work on that. And I just absolutely love it. Coming off that, what the spikes do in the Shakti mat, and with the blood flow and the oxygenation from the breath work, plus the benefit from the infrared light panel. Anything that you...
I play around with the Shakti mat, but something that I do every night is use the toe spreaders. So put the gel between my toes like every night. I found that's really good stress release from, you know, a day where I've either done like a bunch of training or I've been in shoes all day. As much as I could, you know, wear barefoot shoes to go running, like I'd love to be able to do it. I just find it's just too intense. So, but again, your feet are cramped up. So it's like just using that as a bit of a meditation. Actually, touching on meditation, I'm not really a huge like sit down 15, 20 minutes of like trying to meditate person. I find that meditating for me is something where I would do some breath work, put these between my toes and actually just, sit in the sauna for half an hour. I find that is a form of, my own meditation rather than sitting down cross-legged, just, doing that thing. So I think, finding what works and getting those things done regularly to help you recharge has been good. I've noticed a huge difference in just my sleep. I don't know what it is from spreading out my feet every night.
I'm intrigued by that. I'm thinking traditional Chinese medicine and chakras and things like that. We need to find out.
Someone asked me about that the other day. I kind of sent them a photo of my ugly feet and, putting my gel things in there, and they're just like, what does it do? And I'm just like, I don't know what it is yet, but I find that I definitely sleep deeper from it. And again, I'm just exploring it to see what it is. I know it's a weird kind of practice, and, especially if you're making dinner for people and you're walking around, they're just like, what the fuck are you doing? But that's fine. It makes me feel good,
What are you doing looking at my feet?
Exactly.
My eyes are
eye
up here.
contact. Yeah, exactly.
My mind goes to, because I was a therapist for a lot of years, maybe it's a fascial sling type thing. And if you're in shoes and there's that compression, that's fascial sling, and that comes up your posterior chain. So that could have an effect in that sort of way. But I'm going to find out, and I'm going to bring it back to the listeners of why the toe spreaders work.
I'd definitely like to do it, because I notice the difference between the nights that I do it and the nights when I don't do it. So again, I've kind of practiced on the nights of having it, and I feel good, and the nights, maybe a few consecutive nights without it. It's just like, I can't quite figure it out, but there's definitely an element of deeper sleep there somehow.
Brilliant. The barefoot thing, I just realised I don't even think I brought shoes with me today. I was coaching on the beach early this morning, and then went from there to another coaching session and realised, I don't have my shoes, and then I've come here barefoot as well. So
perfect.
I used to get around barefoot so much and like everywhere, but I realised it was impact on my knees too and I'd do, when we lived at Miami, I'd do a 10K run that would be straight out onto the beach, up around Burleigh Headland, so on the footpath, and then back down onto the sand.
Bare feet,
yeah. And I could handle it really well, except the impact through my knees and my spine was starting to take its toll a little bit. So now I go barefoot heaps, but I'm also an advocate for wearing shoes at the right times as well. I remember in 2016, we're at the Paralympic Games in Rio, and that's when I was right into my barefoot, and I was going barefoot to the track and warming up the athletes before their events in the stadiums. And one of my mentors came over and said, Bretty, she's Ukrainian, I don't think you'll get the benefits today. The ground is disgusting. And I'm like, yeah, I think you're right, actually. If I've got a little cut on my foot, I'll end up with an infection. There's a limit to this barefoot thing.
So good.
Geordie, we could chat for hours, mate. I'd love to get you back on another time and jam again. But before we wrap up, where can the listeners find more information from you and follow your journey?
Yeah, I think if you just go to my website, which is jordanchenery.com, it has all the links in there that you can get access to, all my visuals and my tweets and my newsletters, and, how you can contact me as well. So I think you just go there. It's got all the links in one place.
Brilliant. We'll put that in the show notes too. Hey, what's your most active social platform?
I'd say I'm probably active a lot on Twitter, because I share a lot of thoughts. But
is Twitter still alive?
Yeah, Twitter's awesome. However, I just share a lot of visual stuff of what I'm up to on Instagram as well. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll put all those in the show notes too.
Awesome.
Mate, before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to leave with the listeners, or anything you would like to ask me?
No, I think we're pretty good. I think it's obviously it's been nice chatting. We're obviously very like-minded, but it's nice being able to learn from you as well, because it makes me not feel like, again, I'm as alone as what I am some days. So it's nice to be able to bounce ideas and share what's working and what's not working, because, again, I've learned some stuff from today too, which has been awesome. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Jordan, you're a legend. You are a prime example of someone that can have humility and calmness amongst the chaos, and an example of the saying that I love, calm mind, unbeatable life. Keep shining your impactful and abundant light to the world, my man.
Cheers, Brett. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
All good.
Thank you, my man.
How good.
There you go. Another empowering episode, and thanks again for tuning in. Make sure you check out the show notes for any extra links or information that we spoke about in this episode. Don't forget you can now catch the Unbeatable You podcast on the YouTube channel, Brett Robbo Coach. If you want info and inspiration straight into your inbox on how to live an unbeatable life, you can sign up to receive weekly insights and actionable steps for optimal performance and thriving in every aspect of your life, plus first release offers on Unbeatable You courses and live events. Don't worry, there's no spam, just short, punchy, value-giving emails straight to you. Simply go to brettrobbo.com/community. If you find value in this podcast, don't forget to share it around with your mates and subscribe, rate, and review. It really supports the podcast mission massively. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can connect with me at Brett Robbo Coach on social media, and that's where you can let me know who you want to hear on the show. Keep thriving, legends, and as always, remember, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? This is your opportunity to live your unbeatable life.